Hi, this is Rob Ryder speaking out of Cornwall in England, and I'd like to talk today about the currency, economic problems. For the last 3 years, obviously, a lot of people have been focusing on the medical situation, shall we say, and the science behind that, or the pseudoscience, the lack of science behind that. I'm saying it's no different a medical doctor than an economist. They're not using the scientific method. It's a pseudoscience because medical doctors are experts in details of insanity, just as economists are absolute experts and details in insanity. And they blind us with these details, thinking it's all so complicated. That's just the smokescreen for the simplicity which is behind it. And the three questions I always say ask in pretty much any type of research is, what is it that you're looking into? Where does it come from? How does it function? Which I've gone into in other money videos on the channel if you go back. I don't want to repeat myself here. So my focus now is I'm hoping that there'll be a renewal now of a push from the medical issues to money creation, because we're now going into a period of possibly, I say possibly, the last bust cycle, should we say, the last crash, because it's very clear that they're making the ground fertile for their solution of a type of one world currency through central bank digital currencies. I predicted an enormous crash in 2010 that I've been waiting for a long time, that I've gone into in other videos. And I've said in a previous video recently, it might not be a crash as we see it. I don't think they want an absolute complete crash, because that leaves a little bit of a void, but this is where they're pushing us. So there could be a big dramatic incident that will crash it, but this is where they want to nudge us anyway. It's so important now that as many people as possible get their head around money, currency, economy, because I've done talks regarding this for quite a few years, just locally, small talks. It's amazing the amount of people. Now, you could say it's my explanation, but I always go back to the foundation and build it up and make it as simple as possible. And yet people still will go home, watch an economic program, watch the BBC and say, oh yeah, but it's confusing. They go back into the smokescreen of the nonsense and get confused. No different with people who might listen to somebody talking about holistic health, natural health, and then they go back to listen to a doctor in the complexity and think, oh, maybe it isn't that simple. It is that simple. Life is simple. The only way that this is going to be stopped is a mass awareness campaign of money creation, or which is really currency creation. I've said in other videos, but for the sake of it, I'll just say money at the moment. It's a term we're all used to, but it is currency. We need mass awareness, because it's only a certain amount of people that is going to stop this. Not me on my own, not other people on their own. Mass awareness. And I always try to explain things in the simplest of way. So you'd have to go back to the other videos. But I'm going to hope that what I've been supporting since about 2010, the Bradbury pound campaign, national credit, I'm hoping that can be kickstarted again. And there's going to be a lot of focus on that in the alternative media. That was kickstarted by Justin Walker. I'll try and find a link to the Hardwick Alliance below, which he's involved with. Put a link to that. That was heavily pushed by the UK column for years. Now they've kind of gone off on money the Bradbury pound recently, but I've got a feeling, I'm hoping they'll get back on to pushing that as a solution. The only economist I know, now he hasn't mentioned the Bradbury pound, but the only economist I know is Richard Werner, who's been talking about this stuff. And I'll put a link to his YouTube channel below. And he worked in Japan in the 90s, and he's seen the problems that was going on and it made him delve deeper in to the money system and money creation system, which again, I'm not going to repeat. We've done that in previous videos, but he's seen how it worked. He's seen the connection between central banks, private banks, investment banks, etc., and how many policies, monetary policies, can be used to either free people or control people. But ultimately, it's seen that what's been doing over decades and decades and decades now is sucking the wealth more and more into the bigger banks. And this isn't going to stop until there is only central bank digital currencies. Now, I've said in other videos, I think, to be careful about solutions, because we all know, if you've been into this since the 2008 crash, Richard Werner figured out this earlier, as other people have, but for me it was the 2008 crash, that banks create 97% of the monetary supply, currency, should we say, monetary supply, via credit. So we know that. Now, that has been kept a secret. My MP recently, when I challenged him on this, denied that. When I resent him the link from the Bank of England, who don't deny it, they openly state it, if you can find it, that banks via credit are creating new money into the economy, then they could possibly, we've got high inflation now, which they're blaming on not the right reasons. They could, the central bankers and the government could then turn against the banks and highlight that they're creating money out of thin air to give the excuse to collapse the banks or not bail the banks out again if there's a need for a bailout. Because what they want ultimately is just central bank digital currencies in every country, which are programmable and which will control people. So don't think that the bankers won't attack their own banks, because it's all part of the big game. And you have to understand the game that's been playing by seeing what the outcome is. So it's massively important now that people understand the game and understand what's happening on, and we need to educate ourselves. I'm not an educated person, never been to college in my life. But what I seen was I got through the smokescreen because I couldn't understand it. I don't understand all these complex terms. When you get the smokescreen out of the way, it's like, wow, there it is, right in front of you. So I support the Bradbury Brown campaign. Now, I'm just going to read a bit. This is out of my book, Debt Slavery. Short bit. So this is by Justin Walker. In August 1914, at the outbreak of the First World War, to avoid the imminent collapse of the private banks and the Bank of England itself, Parliament passed a bill through Parliament in 2 days which authorised Her Majesty's Treasury, not the Bank of England, to create, issue and control money that was debt-free and interest-free, because it was based entirely on the wealth and potential of the British nation. The high street banks reopened, and people who had planned to withdraw their savings in gold were more than happy to accept these new Treasury notes created by Her Majesty's government, and there was no problems at all concerning inflation. The private banking system was saved from collapse, but unfortunately the politicians, who were and still are subservient to the wishes of the City of London, went back to borrowing debt-laden money out of thin air from private financial sector, which resulted in the bankers being able to make a killing out of the killing on the Western Front. And it's also meant that the national debt went up unlawfully from 650 million in 1914 to 7,500 million in 1919. So that's an extract from The Bradbury to the Rescue by Justin Walker. So when people are looking for solutions, again, there's a little hint in there about gold. The power of the Bradbury was legal tender. So that's one aspect. Again, I don't want to go back over this, but people who are putting forward a gold-backed currency, in my opinion, are just barking up the wrong tree completely. They don't realize it's a subjective value. The only value you need for a currency is it to be legal tender, because it's a belief system. Now, the reason the Bradbury was introduced to stop a run on the banks, but what it showed was the Treasury, the government via the Treasury, can just produce their own credit as and when, debt free. We have a system now which is fraudulent, because if I was to go up to a friend, take his credit card, use that credit card to spend it as I wish for me, that would be fraud. But the government are doing it every day by borrowing money, by selling these bonds in your name. Selling, it's your debt, but they're creating this debt. So the first thing people understand is government should never be able to borrow money in your name because it's fraud. And second, they don't need to borrow money. They can create money. Remember, it's currency really, but we're using the term money. They can create money out of thin air. So the biggest thing that people say, well, you can't do that because it causes inflation. Again, even economists will say that. Utter nonsense. For a start, money isn't a thing that exists. You hear the politicians saying there isn't a magical money tree. Well, where does it come from? Yeah, it has to be created. And we found out that 97% of the monetary supply is created when banks extend credit. The other 3%, possibly less now, is what we call cash. So creating money, printing money out of thin air causes inflation is utter nonsense. Because there's lots of money around and we're not always in inflation. We are at the moment. And that was easily predicted by myself in early 2020 when they started paying people to stay at home and not work. So if you again, I recommend listening to Richard Werner on his YouTube channel. If you talk about 3 areas where money could go when it's created, one is to assets, houses, land, works of art. It's not the productive economy, these are assets. If money's going into there, being created out of thin air as credit and being pushed into there, now he reckons 10% of money creation could cause an asset bubble and a bank collapse. When he was in Japan, he was seeing 25% going into assets, which caused an enormous recession, crash. So pushing money creation into assets, especially if it's too much, will cause an asset bubble. The price of the assets will go up, but it's not sustainable because you haven't got the economy to back it up. That will eventually crash, an asset bubble, which we had in 2008. So that isn't how you create money and use it out of thin air. So that wouldn't work. Of course it wouldn't work. Creating money and put it into consumer spending will create inflation. What have we seen in 2020? It wasn't difficult to predict. How can economists not predict this when your local window cleaner is trying to warn people? It's unbelievable when you see behind the smoke screen, because they paid millions upon millions upon millions in this country, I don't know the final figure, to shut down the economy and people to sit at home. They're going to go out, they're going to sit at home with all this money, they don't have to work, they're not being productive, they're on Amazon buying things because all the local shops were shut down, so the small economy was gone. Where's all this money going? Into the only big stores that are left open, and Amazon, money going into China. So there was going to be inflation. Now, Richard Werner explained this. I wasn't sure how long, but he said there's about an 18-month time lapse, and it was pretty much on the button. 18 months have passed, and we're seeing this massive inflation. Everyone was saying it's okay, these highly trained economists and politicians, because they're utterly clueless or they're bought and paid for. So, of course, printing money to do that doesn't work. And this is the objections they have to printing money. whilst forgetting at the same time that money doesn't exist, so it has to be printed. This is the cognitive dissonance within politicians, economists, and the general public, or amateur economists like myself. The third idea is you print money out of thin air as credit and put it into the productive economy. You can do that as much as you like. There doesn't have to be a limit. And this is one of the things the gold people state, is that gold will restrict the amount of money in circulation, therefore you won't get inflation. Utter nonsense, because the amount of money in circulation has got zero, nothing at all to do with inflation. It's the amount of money in regards to productive energies, shall we say. So if you're printing money and it's not going into the economy, of course you're going to get inflation. That's not what we're saying here. Again, it's this inversion that we're seeing through people who, economists, politicians, they've lost the plot completely. It's inverted. Currency should come into existence to serve production in the economy, because everything is free. Like I've said in other videos, everything is free. The resources are free. We use the resources via our imagination, which is free, to solve problems, to have things we need, to build homes, food, shelter, clothing, etc. It's all free until we put a value on it. Now, let's be honest, we're not at a stage in humanity where we can just live freely and we don't charge because it doesn't work. We're not there yet. Let's deal with where we are at. All right, we're going to have a monetary system. Right. You bring money in circulation as a unit of currency to represent that productive energy. That means you can have unlimited production, which will be backed by unlimited money, and it won't cause inflation. It will not cause inflation. Now, you'll always need a mechanism, as I've said in other videos, as the economy production grows, money creation needs to grow. As production goes down, money needs to come out. Credit is a great way to do that, because if you need £100,000 to expand your production, you need a new technology to expand your production. You go to a bank, you get the £100,000, that pumps £100,000 new into the economy, into the monetary supply. That £100,000 then serves, it doesn't control, it serves this production over so many, say 5 or 6 years, whatever, to produce £100,000 worth of productive energies to expand that business. As that business is expanding, that person's paying back that £100,000 loan. What does that do? It takes the money out of circulation because it was credit. It's a perfect system that creates its own balance. It creates its own balance, so you're not going to get inflation. As a nation, because we don't want to go into a central system where only the treasury or the central bank is creating money. We can provide all our government spending. I hate that word government, and we need a new term for that. We need a public body of public servants. All they have to do is build and maintain the infrastructure. The roads, energy supply, water supply, all has to be nationalised. They have to build and maintain that with national credit, a Bradbury pound, should we say, if you want to give it that name, but it doesn't matter. National, sovereign, debt-free credit. That money will come into circulation to back a project, say, of £1 billion. And this is where the clever people need to come in, the economists, because they will always have to keep a balance with the productive energies, the production, and the money that's being created. So that money has to come back out and get recycled somewhere else to stop inflation. Because once it's served its purpose, it's excess money then. So it has to come back, or it has to go to other areas to serve other projects. Now, my opinion, we don't want the government to be the sole creators of money, because that's getting too much power and control. Now, what Richard Werner has found, the most successful economies are decentralized economies that have thousands of local, regional, state banks, community banks. America, thousands. Europe has thousands, but they've lost thousands since the European Central Bank come in, because for all you people who are pro-Europe, I'm sorry, that is an agenda to bring about communism. The European Central Bank is passing policies to squeeze out the smaller banks. I think he stated since that's come in, 5,000 small banks in Europe have gone out of business. The German economy, well known for their economy, thrives because of small banks feeding small customers. The Japanese economy, the same. The Chinese economy started to grow when they went from the state bank to thousands of small banks. Now, obviously, money creation could be used for agendas, but so it's not just a question of putting a monetary solution problem. We need to get public servants there who are going to serve us. So that's a second part of the problem, but you have to have the solution there. This needs challenging. So we create money ourselves as a nation to build and maintain the infrastructure. We need to own our resources again. We need to get the steel works back open, coal mining, whatever. We need to own our own resources. But we don't want to be dependent on government. So apart from that, we have thousands of commercial banks, small banks, local banks, community banks. As much diversity as you want. Even start bartering systems, trading systems, trade however you want. Doesn't matter. If you want to trade gold, silver. If you want to change digital currencies, trade them. The more diversity, the better. But what you find, rather than us being subject to money to do things, in reality, we are the creators of our own money. Because when you go to a bank for a loan, you write a promise to pay. You create your own promissory note. And then with that, the bank are able, out of thin air, to put 5,000, say it's a £5,000 promissory note. The bank can then put a £5,000 credit into your bank. What you've done is you've created your own money. Now, a lot of people are saying the banks are creating money out of thin air. That's the problem. It's not the problem at all. Zero. The problem is the interest. Yeah, but if we can have community banks, I've put forward a solution in my book, how banks can still make money without the interest, which is you pay an upfront charge that comes out of the existing monetary supply. Yeah, that solves the problem of more debt than credit. It's a simple solution, very simple. We can create local banks that are non-profit for the community, which as a community, we would pay their own maintenance. There's lots of ways around this, but what is important to people to understand is that we are creating our own money when needed, backed by what productive plan we have. It all has to be regulated and accountable. We don't want a deregulated system, because we don't want nudge, nudge, widge, wink. I'm going to create thousands for you and you don't pay it back, or you put it wherever and there's no consequence. All has to be accountable. A regulated system where both lender and borrower are accountable. And if we have local banks, it's easier to keep people accountable. Local bank managers will know, oh, that business, it's doing quite well. I can borrow that business money because I know where he wants to go. He wants to install new technology to keep up. Whereas he'll also know, oh, that business being neglected, we know what he's doing. He's not really doing anything there. We won't borrow there. The power of money creation this way comes back into the people, because all money is a tool. It's a tool so our productive energies can be exchanged. 1 unit of currency is 1 unit that represents your productive energies. This is not trying to find an equal system. We are all equal, because we're not. It's the opposite of socialism. It's about taking responsibility. And because we can do this all debt-free, just imagine for a moment how much money left over would be. I think at the moment it was years ago when I looked at this, £1 billion a week going into the pockets of the international corporations just to service the the government debt. Sorry, not the national, the government debt. That'd be gone. I think it could be at least 2 or 3 billion a week, a month now. No, sorry, more. I think it could be a lot more. I've seen the latest Justin Walker published the latest figures, but let's say it's for example 5 billion a month. Just off the bat, that's 5 billion a month more we've got. Just off the bat, that's not even the start of it. So we can easily fund our nation. The success, we don't have to compete with anyone. The success of our nation will depend on us and the resources we've got. And not all countries have all resources, but all countries have resources. Yeah, you might not be rich in oil, or you might not be rich in copper or whatever, but most countries are rich in something, so that they can have a surplus and trade for what they haven't got. In the UK, we've got, I believe, unlimited North Sea oil. We've got coal. We had a great steel industry. Maybe manufacturing could come back. There's lots of things that we could do. We've got good fertile land for growing. There's lots of things that we could do. There's no reason for any country to be poor. You need to invest more in the sciences, because technology will always help. And it will be dependent on you. Government should never be allowed to borrow. That has to go. And we fund our own infrastructure. And then to avoid too much government power, we decentralize everything. And we leave people to fund their own local economies as they see fit. And creating credit, money out of thin air, as it were, is a great way to do it. Like anything, it's like the axe. You can chop a tree down with it, or you can chop somebody's head off with it. It's how you use it that could be used for the benefit or used for negative reasons. And there's a lot of people that just still don't get it. How can you create money out of thin air? Well, that's where it comes from anyway. Where do you think it comes from? And they again repeat, oh, you just print a load of money, it'll cause inflation. No, it won't. Put money into assets, it'll create an asset puzzle. Put money into consumer spending, like we've seen 2020, and don't put it into the economy, you get inflation. Put money into the productive economy, you'll get a stable economy for as long as you want. And the last thing is, well, you can't have an unlimited economy on a finite planet, because we're destroying the planet. This is what the green people will say. Most of the destruction on the planet is caused by a debt-based system. Yeah. So we have to keep growing the economy, even though that's a bit of a strange thing, because what do you mean by growing the economy? What do you mean? Because if it's done in numbers and digits and pounds, well, that's always changing anyway. But under this debt-based system, we have to keep consumer goods going through the chain into landfill as quick as possible to keep up with the debt. Because if new money comes into circulation, as the debt's taking money, as you're paying off the debt, you're taking money out of circulation. If no new money comes in, you can't keep up with it. So you have to constantly keep this conveyor belt of madness going, which will cause environmental damage because you're consuming more than you need. With an unlimited debt-free system, we can afford to fund quality products that will last. So actually, an unlimited system in this sense, debt-free, will be far better for the environment, far better. And this is what people still can't get their head around it. I don't know why. Maybe I'm not explaining it well, but it's so unbelievably simple. So I'm going to support getting into now national credit. If people want to call it the Bradbury pound campaign, I'm happy to promote that. We need as many. Now, I know, not everyone's going to get their head around this. I'm not an intelligent person, and I went to college or university, but I was pretty good with numbers. But the reason I get it, I've gone through the smokescreen and seen it for what it is. And you have to stop allowing these people to confuse you. We need as many people as possible to see through this nonsense, get back to the foundation of money. What is it? Where does it come from? How does it function? How is it functioning against us? Therefore, the solution comes out of the problem. How can it function for us? And it's simple. We need a mass campaign of this, and create awareness of this. There are pitfalls. People start to get in with a gold-backed currency. Not needed. Why complicate things? Doesn't work. Bitcoin, digital currencies, etc. Not needed. I'm not saying there isn't a future in digital currencies, but they're not needed at this stage of what we're in at the moment. There's an easy fix to everything. If your issue is health, the environment, whatever your issue, it doesn't matter. It could pretty much all be fixed by debt-free currency. That is the key to fix everything, because these people will lose their power of money creation via debt, and then all their little pyramid will start to collapse. We need as many people as they can to educate themselves in the simplest. This book that I wrote, it's not that big, because I cut through all the nonsense in the smokescreen and just give it to the simple science that it is. It's unbelievably simple, and we need as many people as we can to get on board with this, or the future ain't going to be too bright. That's an absolute fact. Thank you.